Welcome to the Influence and Inspire podcast, episode 3. I'm delighted to tell you my guest today is Tony McKenzie, a professional business, career and life coach. Tony, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good. So Tony, can we start off with you telling me a bit more about yourself?
Okay, so where do I start? Basically, I'm a life coach, peak performance coach, and author. And what I also do is I research and develop new techniques and strategies for personal change. So that's like my side gig. But more or less, I'm a coach who helps people achieve their goals by primarily focusing on their belief systems and unhooking them from their own belief systems that are holding them back. As I said, belief systems to me are the most important aspect of achieving your goals or not achieving them.
Okay.
So what I've done is develop a process to help people eliminate their beliefs that are blocking them from moving forward in any area of their life.
Okay. So what made you become a performance coach?
It's a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. Basically, my career spans about 2 decades. I spent 11 years in the music business, and then I spent 8 years in the fashion business, both of which I didn't really enjoy.
Okay.
I wanted to do something a bit more serious with my life, and then after a few massive changes in my life, I decided to focus on what I really wanted to do, which was personal growth. Do something in the area of personal growth and self-help. So I became certified as a coach. I wrote a book, which is called Were Born Invincible.
Okay.
Which is now in its 2nd edition, which is available on Amazon.
Right. Okay.
And basically what I did was I created a system for myself, which I teach to other people, which is basically to help them remove the limiting beliefs that hold them back. And basically I use that as a tool. That's all it is. It's nothing more than a tool.
Right.
It's a tool that allows you to unhook yourself from limiting beliefs about your finances, your relationships, and even your health. So I basically push that focus and an area of change. And it's basically where my speciality is. It basically getting people unhooked from their limiting beliefs and getting them to move forward very, very rapidly.
Okay. So I suppose that is, if we go back to your book, is your book based on these beliefs as well? And what is You Were Born Invincible all about?
Well, You Were Born Invincible is basically, the entire book is based on a part of the Bible that basically states, "Ask and it shall be given."
Okay.
And basically what I did was I researched that because I'd learned several techniques since 1998. Well, I learned several techniques since the early 1980s, because that's when I started my path into self-help and personal growth. But I learned various new techniques after I experienced a tragedy in my life about how you can use the power of questions to access resources within yourself. And one of the things I discovered was that you could actually use questions, the power of questions, to get rid of limiting beliefs.
Right. Okay.
And the whole book is based on one very powerful process that allows you to remove limiting beliefs from your life, no matter how long you've had them, in about 60 seconds.
60 seconds?
60 seconds, because it's based on the principle that you created the belief in the first place. Every belief is just a thought in your head.
Okay.
You're the one that gives it power. So if you want to eliminate it, you just got to make a decision as to whether or not you want to keep holding on to it. So what I developed was a process where you could ask yourself a specific question in a certain kind of way that would allow you to basically release yourself from the belief and do it very, very quickly. It also allows you to access resourceful states and achieve your goals.
Okay.
So that's basically, in a nutshell, the old edition of the first edition of the book was basically all of the techniques that I discovered and developed over the years, and I put that in the form of a book.
Yeah.
But the updated 2nd edition is basically much more focused on goal setting, much more focused on getting what you want out of life, and basically using it and being much more focused in that way. Whereas the previous edition had quite a few techniques in it. Not all of it was relevant to goal setting. And what most authors do when they do an updated second edition, they add stuff.
Okay.
But what I decided to do was remove certain chapters so people could be more focused on what they were doing. And also I updated the techniques because
Right.
in the original book, it took about 3 minutes to get rid of a limiting belief, but now it takes about 60 seconds, or less than 60 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So just on that, can you give an example of how easy it is to erase a limiting belief?
Yeah. What you do first off, and this is probably 50% of the process, you've got to
Right.
acknowledge the belief that you've got, the limiting belief that's holding you back. And what you do is you basically acknowledge it by basically saying, let's say, for instance, you have a belief that you want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Or you have a limiting belief that you can't lose weight. Basically, it's a struggle, it's hard, it's difficult.
Yeah.
So what you then acknowledge is, I have a belief. And this is sort of like taking yourself off automatic. So you basically acknowledge that you have the limiting belief. And and by doing that, you're acknowledging that you're the one who created it. And what you then do, as you acknowledge the belief, let's say, for instance, you're 20 pounds overweight and you don't believe you can lose that weight.
Yeah.
And you just acknowledge it. Then you ask a simple question. And that question is, where is that ability within me to instantly and permanently stop believing that I can't lose these extra 20 pounds? And then you pause and be curious for about 10 seconds. And within that 10-second period, what happens is your mind is forced to answer the question. And it answers the question by actually giving you the ability to get rid of the belief. And then afterwards, if you still feel that there's a little bit of energy behind the belief still left, then you repeat the process, but maybe once or twice. But most beliefs disappear after asking the question once or twice. And what it is, a belief is really just a thought that's got a feeling of certainty behind it.
Yeah.
And that feeling of certainty, once it's gone, all you've got is a thought in your head that means nothing to you. It's just a thought. So once you start using the process, you start realizing that your beliefs are your creation and they only have the power that you give them. Now, people are shocked a lot of the time. They say they don't believe that they can do this, but I give the example of imagine that you worked at a certain company. You got a job in a certain company and a friend of yours who you really trusted works at that company also. So let's say when the first day that you start, you meet another colleague and your friend tells you about something about that colleague.
Yeah.
That's not very nice or quite horrible. And let's say you work in that company and you basically accept it on face value because you trust your friend.
Yeah.
So let's say you work for 10 years in that company believing this.
Yeah.
And let's say you decide to leave the company and you have a leave and do, and your friend comes back and your friend comes to your leave and do, and this other colleague comes to your leave and do, and you mention the thing that your friend told them about that person. And your friend tells you, oh, that wasn't true. That was never true. And they give you reasons why that's not true. Right. What then happens is, in that instant, you stop believing something that you believed for 10 years. Right. The difference is you had to see evidence in the world to give yourself permission to stop believing it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Whereas you don't really need permission to get rid of limiting beliefs. Yeah. It's just all you have to do is acknowledge. And sometimes it's a little bit like taking yourself off automatic and realizing that you're the one in charge and you're the one who's always been in charge. Yeah. A big part of what I teach my clients, it's also in the book, is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And personal responsibility is something that most people, especially in the Afro-Caribbean community, don't really like. They don't really like the term because they associate it with blame.
Right. Okay.
And it's something that usually very conservative right-wing politicians tend to beat people over the heads over the heads about. Said, "Oh, you need to take more responsibility for your life."
Yeah.
Blah blah blah, and that's basically why a lot of people in our community tend to refrain from that. But the thing is, personal responsibility, practicing a concept of personal responsibility, is the most empowering thing you can ever do for yourself. And what most people don't realize is not being responsible for your life is the most disempowering thing you can do. And a lot of the time, people tend to, and I'm quite outspoken. You can probably guess I'm quite outspoken about this. But a lot of time, when I talk about this, people tend to think what I'm actually doing is saying that all of the issues, all of the problems that you have in your life is your fault. And I come from a position where I don't believe in the concept of fault. I don't believe in the concept of blame. You can say that someone did something to you at a certain period in your life and it caused a certain result.
Yeah.
But I always say to people, you're responsible for fixing it. And most people would say, but I didn't cause it. And I would agree. And I would agree. But it's the old, I have to give another metaphor, but it's the old thing like this. Imagine you're walking down the road. Someone knocks you over the head, kidnaps you, throws you in a pit.
Yeah.
Right. You wake up in the pit and they've taken all your money, taken your clothes, and you're angry, you're enraged at the injustice of it all. Okay. And even though it's not your fault that you're in that pit. It's not your fault. A crime has been committed against you. However, you're the only one who can get you out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The responsibility for you getting out of that pit is yours. Now, this is where people will say, and this is where the subtle language that you hear with a lot of politicians and a lot of activists say, they say, well, the condition of the black community is not their fault. And I say, I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's not. But no one else gives a toss about them. No one cares about them. It's their responsibility to fix.
Yeah. So who's going to get them out of that position?
Yeah. No one's going to do it for them. And we live in a really unjust, corrupt, violent world. And I still hear people saying that we want justice. As far as I'm concerned, justice doesn't exist. People might think I'm being cold and irrational, but I'm saying if you're in a situation in your life, and I say this with every client, I could give them advice, I can give them tasks, I can give them directives and action steps to fulfill, but they're responsible for carrying it out. They're responsible for their life. I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for being giving them the tools and the strategy that will enable them to transform their life.
Yeah.
But they are the ones who are responsible for taking that step.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems to me that no matter how many talks I give, how many interviews I give, when I talk about this concept of personal responsibility, I don't even call it personal responsibility. I call it practicing the art of radical responsibility. When I mean practicing the art of radical responsibility, I mean you take responsibility for everything.
Right.
And if you start getting into the practice of this, what you find is you don't care who's elected. You don't care who's in government. You don't care what the state of the economy is. You're taking responsibility for your destiny. Right? And I understand, and this is one of the things that I do as well, because I research different new strategies and techniques, because I'm constantly refining the tools that I develop for my clients.
Yeah.
I also do a great deal of research. And because of doing that research, I become a bit of an expert in what kinds of belief systems certain communities have and how it holds them back. And one of the things I noticed in the Afro-Caribbean community, and I should actually separate that. I can't say Afro-Caribbean community. I have to say Caribbean community and the African-American community, because those two communities are twinned in a way because they have a shared history, a similar history of slavery.
Yeah.
And African immigrants who come to the UK I have more, although they look black just like us, but they have more in common with the Indian community because they still had some form of government and country and culture.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're descended from slaves, you make up your own culture. You have to make up your own stuff because your original culture is taken away from you.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've noticed with the African American community and the Caribbean community is a belief system. And it's a belief system that comes from the history of those communities. It's not something that's in our DNA. It's not something that we're born with.
Yeah.
It's just something that if you imagine your great grandfather, where if he's Caribbean or he's African American,
Yeah.
they mostly were raised by white slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about your grandfather.
Yeah,
my great grandfather.
Yeah.
So I'm going back a bit, and the belief systems that they developed in order to keep them safe are the belief systems that today are holding Black Americans back and Caribbean community back as well. Because you can hear this in the back of every conversation, every debate, every talk on television in America when it comes to the African American community, and to a certain extent here, but we're not really high on the radar here unless there's some incident, unless some violence or there's a riot, something.
Yeah.
Usually we're not on the radar unless something bad happens, and then we are in the UK. That is.
Yeah.
But in America, when they're discussing this, in the background of every conversation of every leader, and I've heard, and I came to the conclusion, and this is not very scientific. This is purely an observation and listening to a lot of speeches and listening to where people are coming from. Because as a coach, one of the things I have to do is I have to listen. I have to listen very intently to what my clients are saying. Because when I have conversations with my clients, I get to uncover what their belief systems are.
Yeah.
And because I understand what their belief systems are, and then I can work with them to remove them very quickly. Yeah. But one of the things I've noticed the same thought system come from Louis Farrakhan, Dr. Cornel West, Tavis Smiley, a lot of celebrities, and a lot of Black politicians as well in America. I've heard this. I can sense this belief system that comes from that. I even hear it in movies and in TV shows. It's there in the background, but no one sort of admits it. Yeah. And what I came to the conclusion of, there are three core beliefs that probably 90 to 95% or even higher of Caribbean people have and African Americans have. And the first one, and they have a hierarchy. So the first belief is, I am inferior. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And the second belief, which comes down from that, because I am inferior, I have no power. Okay? And the third one, which comes down from that, because I have no power, I can't create the life that I want. And I say to people when I tell people this, and they say, you think you're crazy. Where'd you get that from? But this has come from listening intently to a lot of Black people, and I ask them the question. And in many instances, people have just admitted, yeah, we haven't got any power. If you look at a lot of the debates that are currently happening in America and sometimes here in Europe, you'll find that the biggest argument is we need political change. We need policies that will enable Black people to prosper and be successful in the country, whether it's this country or in America. Yeah. And in America, it's much more fierce, and it's much more dogmatic, and it's much more intense. But in America, they say we need political change. And then I might debate with someone via a forum or talking to someone who's over here by basically saying, you've actually got to take radical responsibility for what you've got. Now, here's the thing. When I tell people you got to take responsibility, they feel I get a negative response, because what they hear is you're to blame.
Yeah, you're not taking any responsibility.
Yeah. But I also understand, and this is the difficult part of my job. I understand why they don't do it. I totally understand. I've given talks one of the three areas that I specialize in terms of using belief system is goal setting,
Yeah.
accelerated learning,
Mm-hmm.
and basically eliminating fear and stress. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is, well, stress is really fear.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to, when I'm talking to people, and I can see it in the expression in their faces, and I can read the body language, I can see why we don't move forward, because we're still carrying a belief system that kept us safe in slavery, but is destroying us now. And because if you when people challenge me on this, I
Yeah.
say, think of this for a moment. Imagine you're a slave in 1877 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say 1810. You're a slave in Africa. You're a black slave in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's not helpful for you to think you're equal to your master.
No,
Right?
not at all.
Right? Because if you woke up one morning and you believed, and let's look at the reverse of these three beliefs. Let's say, one, you believed you're equal
Mm-hmm.
in every way to your master.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you have the power to change your life.
Yeah.
Right? Three, two, you have power. Three, you have the ability to change your life and create the life that you want. Now, if you were a slave and you woke up one morning and you had maybe a rock fell on your head or something, and
Yeah.
you woke up one morning with those three beliefs, you would rebel immediately.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe that you were equal, if you believe that you had power, if you believe that you had the ability to create the life that you want, you would never be a slave.
Yeah. So
And go on. Sorry,
so Tony, so just in today, you say we're still carrying around those three beliefs. So
Yes.
are you saying that is a subconscious belief, or do you think that's at the forefront of our consciousness that we have these beliefs?
No. It's never at the forefront, because
Right.
no one would really ever admit that they're inferior.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But no one would ever admit that.
Mhm.
And I say this to people, just because these beliefs are generational. They're passed down
Mhm.
from generation to generation. It's not in your DNA. It's basically conditioned into you. And to a certain degree, the media also helps
Yeah. Yeah.
by perpetrating stereotypes of black people as, one, inferior, and basically lacking in power and ability, and basically being weak. I'll give you a good example of how the media does this. Now, I am a movie buff, and I grew up reading comics. Okay,
Yeah.
and I was recently at an event, and someone was talking about superhero movies, and I just observed. I said, "Isn't it interesting that you got Thor?" I'm talking about Marvel now. You got Thor. You got Captain America.
Yeah.
You got Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
You got Doctor Strange. You got Ant-Man, and they all got a black sidekick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Iron Man's got Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
I can't remember what Captain America's one, but it's Falcon, but I can't remember the name of the actor. Ant-Man has got two. He's got a Latino and a black guy, which is the rapper T.I.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange has Chiwetel Ejiofor, if I pronounce his name correctly. Thor had Idris Elba. Now, Idris Elba might technically not be a sidekick, but he's the token black guy in the movie who has power, but he's second fiddle to Thor. And he helps out Thor when Thor gets into trouble.
Yeah.
So he's not technically a psychic, but this is the whole black psychic thing is something that Hollywood perpetuates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just making an observation. I'm not saying it's some kind of conspiracy. I'm just saying I'm observing by what I see. Yeah. I'm just observing what I see. Now, that's one way in which and it's not just in that every cop movie from the 90s always had a black captain. If you look back, not every cop movie, but a lot of them did.
I can remember
they always had the throwaway black character just for the sake. Every sci-fi film had a black character that was there, and he died in the beginning, and then you never saw him again. So we were kind of throwaway characters, and Hollywood may be unconsciously doing this, but I don't really care about that. I don't care about that because despite all of that, the most damaging thing for the African American community and the Caribbean community and any other community that's descended from a slave culture, right, is carrying around the beliefs that kept you safe in slavery that are damaging you now. And yes, the way the beliefs work is this: the beliefs are just thoughts in our subconscious that we don't question.
Yeah.
That's all they are, right? And as soon as you become aware of them, even by me talking to you about it now, someone can actually say to themselves, do I believe I'm inferior?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I asked them a very simple question. Said, there's an affirmation that they can use, an affirmation which is something that you repeat, a positive that you repeat over and over again until your subconscious mind just gives up and accepts it. So one of the ones I've used with a few clients, some of my Caribbean clients, is I'm equal in terms of ability and intelligence to anyone else on planet Earth. That's one. And the next one is I'm as powerful as anybody on planet Earth, and I can create the life that I want. So, but even if people who are listening to this podcast want to challenge me on this, I just say to them, ask yourself a simple question: Do you feel that you're equal in terms of ability and intelligence to anybody else on planet Earth? If you don't, if there's any hesitation, then it's a lie. You don't. Do you feel like you have power? And most people are, as they say, no. And I've been told repeatedly. And what you'll find is if you listen to people's conversation, you ask yourself, are these people talking as if they are equal?
Yeah.
Are they talking as if they have power? Or are they talking as if they can create the life? Are they talking as if they can create the life that they want? And what you'll find is when we have issues in the Caribbean community or in the African American community, there's only one request at the end of it. The government needs to do something. And I would agree, but it's not, because it's broken. Okay. So it's like asking a broken system, a broken hi-fi to play your CD. Okay. It's not going to happen. You could stand there as long as you want, but it's not going to happen. Eventually, you have to go get a new CD player or whatever they have now.
Okay.
But that's the point I was making.
Yeah. All right, Tony, moving away from that slightly. So what, in your opinion, is the secret to success?
Okay. It's quite simple. And this has come from a person who had their own fair share of failures in the past. But it all came down to two simple points. One, and what I mean by success, I mean it's any outcome that you want.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't try to focus on success, because success can mean anything to anyone.
Yeah.
It could be losing weight. It could be buying a new car. It could be getting a promotion. It could be starting their own business. It could be being healthy or overcoming a serious illness. There's only two criteria for success. One, you have to believe it's possible.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And two, you have to believe it's okay for you to have it. And the second one is the deadliest one, because most people don't believe.
They don't believe they deserve to have it.
Yeah, they don't believe they deserve it. In fact, there's an issue there's a part of the book in the updated second edition where I talk about the 5 sort of blockers to success for everybody. I won't go into them now, but basically one of them is you don't believe you deserve it. Yeah. And the other one is you don't believe it's possible. But in essence, what it is 2 things. It's you have to believe what you want, what you desire is possible. If you don't believe that, you're just a rat in a maze. You're just going round, and you're not really doing anything. Two, and this is certainly when it comes to wealth, you have to believe it's okay. And for most Afro-Caribbean people, it's not okay for them to be wealthy. And it's not even just Afro-Caribbean people, it's any poor people. Yeah. Anybody who's poor, struggling financially, I tell them, you got a problem with money. Yeah. And they look at me like they want to knock my head off. But basically, and it's not something, again, when I say this, it's not something I say is your fault. Yeah. You didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick the way you were raised or the attitudes that you were conditioned with about money and wealth. If you look at all of the movies and the sort of way wealth is projected, the common consensus is that wealthy people are nasty people. That's
Yeah.
the way the media portrays it,
Yeah.
and they keep portraying it. And if you go back to that movie Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
Titanic was a very good example where you got all the poor people in the bottom of the ship happy,
Yeah.
and all the rich people in the upper decks were miserable,
Mm.
unhappy. So, and that's something that's projected. When you say to people, do you want to be wealthy? They say something quite interesting. They say usually, I don't want to be rich. I just want to be comfortable.
Yes. Yes. I've
Right?
heard that before.
Right. And this is where my coaching experience comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And I annoy people when I ask them, I said, so you're saying you don't want to be rich, you want to be comfortable. So you're
Mm.
saying being rich is uncomfortable
Yeah.
because you're making a choice.
Yeah.
You never said, I want to be rich and comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You said people usually say the specific thing, I don't want to be rich. I just want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And some will say, I just want enough to get by. And I say to most people, I say, you're already doing that.
Mm.
Most people are already doing that. And it's something that's conditioned into them. So those are the beliefs that you have to change. Is being wealthy and prosperous uncomfortable? And for a lot of people, it is.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge, all
Mm-hmm.
the get rich quick schemes that you see online
Yeah.
or that are in seminars, they have a failure rate of like 95%.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't realize it. In the self-help, I don't want to call it the self-help game, but for some people it is.
Mm-hmm.
But in the self-help industry, our failure rate is quite high. It's
Yeah.
over 90%. 90% of the people who buy books about trying to help themselves never do anything with it.
Yeah.
And they never read the book.
Yeah.
90% of the people who buy a home study course never do anything with it, never
Mm-hmm.
listen to the course. Over 90% of the people who go to seminars um,
Yeah.
never do. The effects are short-lived, if any.
Mm.
So it all comes down to mindset. And this is why I focus on it so much. You could have nothing, but with the right mindset, you can create anything that you want.
Yeah.
But you could have everything and with the wrong mindset and you'll be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why you find very wealthy, successful, so-called successful people who are in the entertainment industry or in business committing
Mm-hmm.
suicide
Mm.
because they seem to have it all,
Yeah.
but they're not happy.
Mm.
But you can be happy and wealthy.
Yeah.
You just don't have to do it in the way that people say you need to do it.
Mm.
And that's the challenge. I come back to my point. If you want to create anything in your life, you just have to basically ask two questions. Is it possible? And is it okay for me?
Yeah.
And and the second question is a shocker because most people realize they don't feel that it's okay
Yeah.
for them to have whatever. And as before you end the interview, I want to give people a test that they can ask themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Think of anything that you want to achieve in your life. Anybody who's listening to this now,
Yeah.
and just say to yourself, I'm going to achieve that and I'm going to have that. Just say that just for argument's sake. And then I want you to wait 10 seconds. And what you'll find, most people find, is there's a little bit of tension in your stomach or chest. And that's your mind reacting, saying that's a lie. Because that's how your body reacts to when you lie.
Mm-hmm.
You get tension in your stomach or chest. That's how lie detectors work. They pick up on different changes in your metabolism, and that's how the lie detector machine works. But most people don't realize they have their own lie detector or their own BS detector, and all they've got to do is say something that they would like to be true. I'm going to lose 20 pounds, or I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to have a net worth of X amount of millions or whatever. Right? Just say it to yourself once and wait about 10 to 15 seconds. Once you do that, most people will notice a feeling of tension in their stomach or chest. And that tension in their stomach or chest is basically coming from their limiting beliefs. They say they can't have it, saying it's not okay for them to have it. Or what they want isn't possible.
Yeah.
So that's where people have to start doing that inner work. But as I say, it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people. But the thing is, I use the analogy of getting a six-pack.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, virtually anyone on this planet, can get a six-pack if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
it all depends on where they're starting from. If they're 300 pounds overweight, then it's going to be a bit difficult. It's going to take a bit long. But if they're 20 pounds overweight or 30 pounds overweight, they can do it. But most people don't do it because one, there's those two beliefs, two ideas come up again. Is it okay?
Yeah.
And is it possible? Right. And that, if you can get a six pack, then you can go out there and start £1 million business or $1 million business.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Yeah.
But you have to move through those limiting beliefs that are holding you back.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, I'm going to have to wrap up this interview, but it has been enlightening speaking to you. And I know the listeners will be enlightened. They'll probably have a few comments. I want to hear some comments come back on what Tony's had to say today, and what the listeners' views are. And I want the listeners to also do some of those tests that Tony's been talking about today. But as I said, Tony, thanks for coming on the show. It's been enlightening. And to be honest, we could have gone on for another half an hour, but the show's got its limits. But I will want to bring you back on the show at some point to talk about a specific subject. So it would be good to get you back on at some point.
Feel free to do that. I'll be happy to do that.
Just before I go, Tony, is there any social media that people can get you on?
Not at the moment, because I've got my social media on hold at the moment. I'm focusing on a few other things. I'm kind of overstretched in the social media stakes. But if they want to get my book, it's available on Amazon. And it's called You Were Born Invincible, and specifically focus on the updated second edition. It's much better if they focus on that, because the old edition is no longer available.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll put that information on the show notes with the Amazon link to your book. So if anyone's interested, they can click the link and go straight to Amazon. All right. Thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks for your time.
Lovely talking to you.